Have you ever really stopped to think about how Viking warriors got so incredibly strong? I mean, these guys carried 80-pound shields into battle for hours. They rode their long ships across open oceans, and they swung these massive, heavy axes with terrifying power. And get this, they never, ever touched a single barbell. So what on earth did they know that we've forgotten?
Right, so let's dive into this, because it's a really fascinating contradiction, right? It's a paradox of just immense raw power, but built without any of the stuff we think is absolutely essential today. Let's break down what made them so different, so formidable. Okay, first, just try to imagine the sheer endurance. We're not talking about a quick set of 3 for 10 in the gym, no. We're talking about holding and fighting with a heavy, awkward object for hours on end in the absolute chaos of a battle. That's a whole other universe of strength.
And then you add this to the mix. They were literally the engines of their ships. Rowing against the currents of the North Atlantic isn't just a back exercise, It's a full-body test of power, of rhythm, of endurance, day in and day out. Your entire body working as one single machine.
And here it is. Here's the kicker that just changes the entire conversation. They did all of this. They built these bodies that would put most modern gym goers to shame, and they never once did a bench press or a bicep curl or counted a single rep. And that brings us right to the heart of the matter. What was their secret? Because clearly it wasn't about the equipment. It was about a fundamental understanding of how the human body is supposed to move and work. An understanding that, you could argue, modern fitness has almost completely lost sight of. And the answer? It's actually surprisingly simple, but at the same time, it's really profound. They focused on movements, not muscles. And that simple shift in perspective, well, that's the key that unlocks the entire Viking method. So let's put these two philosophies side by side. Modern fitness, a lot of the time, obsesses over training individual muscles, isolating the biceps, working the pecs. It's all about looking strong. But the Viking method, that's about integrating the entire body to train functional movements. The goal was never to look strong. The goal was to be strong for the very real demands of their world. And if you take one thing away from this today, let it be this. Vikings didn't train muscles, they trained movements. Their training, their workout, was a direct result of the task at hand. Rowing the boat, building a shelter, fighting. And that is how they built this kind of unbreakable real-world strength. So how do they actually do it? Well, it turns out their strength was built on a foundation of 6 primal movement patterns. Patterns that, honestly, most of us completely ignore in the gym today. Let's dig into them one by one. All right, pattern number 1, carrying heavy stuff. The modern approach might be, a few sets of wrist curls at the end of a workout, but the Viking alternative? Loaded carries. Think about it. They carried everything. Shields, weapons, supplies, timber. They understood that your grip isn't just in your hands, it's connected to your entire body. And the science on this is crystal clear. A loaded carry creates a neurological signal for full body tension. It lights up your rotator cuff for stability. It forces your core to engage like crazy, and it teaches your whole body to stabilize under a dynamic load. It is a completely different and way more powerful stimulus than just flexing your wrist. Okay, let's move on to pattern number 2, rowing and pulling. So many people go to the gym, sit down at a lat pull-down machine, all comfortable and stable, and pull. But Vikings? They rode against unpredictable ocean waves. Their pulling strength had to work in a world of constant instability and exhaustion. And it's that instability that's the magic ingredient. A 2021 study actually found that free weight rows activate 34% more muscle than the machine versions. Why? Well, precisely because your body has to fight to stay stable. That's how you build power that you can actually use when it matters. Next up, pattern 3, lifting things from the ground to overhead. So you've got this seated shoulder press, right? Your back is supported, you're just isolating your deltoids. But in the real world, you never do that. You lift things from the ground and you put them up high. It's one single, explosive, connected movement. You could easily argue that the clean and press is the single most complete strength-building exercise there is. And the research backs that up. Studies show it activates the entire kinetic chain. That's the system of muscles from your toes all the way up to your shoulders at near maximum levels, all in one go. Now for a really big one, rotational power. We are obsessed with crunches and planks, which basically just train the core to flex forward and stay rigid. But the core's real job, its most important job, is to rotate and transfer force. Like when a Viking swung an axe. And this is why it matters so much. Training rotation is what builds the muscles responsible for real athletic power. In fact, research shows that your rotational core strength is the single best predictor of how hard you can throw something or strike something. That is what functional power is all about.
All right, let's move down to the legs with pattern 5. So often we isolate our legs on machines like the leg press or leg extensions. But Viking legs, they were built dragging boats up a beach and marching for miles through brutal terrain. Their strength came from constant, heavy, grinding work. And here's why something like sled work is so brilliant. It's almost purely eccentric. That just means you're only doing the pushing part of the movement, not the lowering part that makes you really sore. This lets you build incredible strength with way less stress on your joints and less muscle soreness, which means you can recover faster and train harder more often. It's a total game changer. And this last pattern, this is the one that ties it all together, training under fatigue. We are taught to rest for 2-3 minutes between sets so we're fresh. But what good is strength that only exists when you're fully rested? That isn't real-world strength. Vikings had to fight for hours, long after pure exhaustion had set in. This right here is the true secret weapon. See, training while you're already tired forces your nervous system to dig deep, to find and recruit muscle fibers it would normally just ignore. It builds what scientists call residual strength capacity. Basically, it's your ability to keep performing when every part of your body is screaming at you to stop. So, when you take all 6 of these patterns and you put them together, you don't just get a workout. What you really get is a complete system for building truly unbreakable, real-world strength. So here it is, the whole system in a nutshell. You start by carrying heavy things to build that foundational, full-body tension. Then you row and you pull with free weights for dynamic, unstable strength. You lift things from the ground to overhead to connect your upper and lower body. You train rotation for explosive power. You push and drag heavy sleds to build your legs. And finally, and this is key, you combine all of these movements to train under fatigue, building strength that actually lasts. And this really brings us to our final thought. The Vikings, they didn't have sports science or fancy training programs. They just had work. Real, hard, demanding work. And maybe, just maybe, the challenge for us today isn't to find the next complicated workout, but to just remember how to train for the demands of life itself. To stop training like a bodybuilder and start training like the work demands it. Let's build your very first week of functional training. This is your roadmap. Here is a super simple plan for a beginner. Notice how it's laid out. You prioritize the most complex movement, the clean and press, early in the week when you're fresh. Then you work through the other key patterns. Saturday is where you put it all together in a fatigue complex. And check out that no equipment column. You can do this entire program right at home. Sunday is key 2, active recovery. It's not about doing nothing, it's about managing fatigue so you can come back strong next week. And yeah, you really don't need a fancy gym membership. Your at-home toolkit is super simple. A sturdy backpack filled with books becomes your kettlebell. Water jugs are your dumbbells for carries. An old towel on a wood or tile floor, that's your sled. And a broomstick is the perfect tool for safely practicing the mechanics of those rotational and overhead moves. So, how do you get stronger? It's simple and systematic. First, and this is the most important rule, master the form. Perfect movement is what keeps you safe and injury-free. Once your form is solid, you slowly increase the weight. Then, after a couple of weeks, maybe add a little more volume, like an extra set. Finally, to really crank up the intensity, you can start shortening your rest periods. That's how you build strength that lasts. Okay, let's bring this all home for the final lesson. This isn't just about a new set of exercises, you know? It's about a huge shift in how you look at strength itself. This line from the source material just says it all, doesn't it? Ask yourself, what does my life demand of me? Train for that. Build a body that's useful, that's resilient, that's capable, not just one that looks a certain way. Build strength that actually serves a purpose. You know, these movement patterns aren't new. They're ancient. They are hardwired into our DNA. All we have to do is strip away all the complicated stuff from modern fitness and just get back to the fundamentals of how humans are supposed to move. The strength is already in there. The only question left is, are you ready to unlock it?